What's up, boys and girls, Lambo here, and in this video we're gonna take a look at Clem versus Cyril, the Grand Finals of the World Championship from last week. We're gonna take a look at the games where Cyril got kind of close. We're gonna talk about what Cyril maybe could have done differently, why did the games go the way they did, how could Cyril have won it, what does Clem do so well in these games, that Maru can't do, for example, or really any other Terran in the entire world, if we're talking about it realistically. So I'm just gonna try to break down the Golden Aura game and the post-youth game. Best of 9s are kind of rough for Zerg in this map pool in general, because Zerg gets two maps that are kind of good for Zerg, but not very Zerg favored, and then Terran has a bunch of maps that are really good for Terran. So you need to come up with special strategies to surprise your opponent more than anything. Here I'm only gonna take a look at Golden Aura and Post-Youth because those two games were kind of close. Maybe Oceanborn if there's time, but I doubt there will be. Since on the two short maps, I can already... This is a spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't watched it yet. On the two short maps, Cyril played 3-gas Roach Ravager Queen build that ended up just dying to 3cc 2-1-1. It kind of looks like a builder win, but I asked Cyril what he actually thought was gonna happen there, because Clem is known to play this very often on these short maps. He likes to go 3cc 2-1-1 because it's like one of the safest builds there is. I'm gonna lower this a little bit. And Cyril still decided to go for it, even though he knows Clem as well as I do, so... I asked him, I will let you guys know in the comments below what Cyril answered me the moment he does answer me, because on paper, for me, going 2-base Roach against someone that's going 3cc 2-1-1, you're behind. Significantly, and in those two games he also just straight up lost. But in one of the games he lost the Overlord, so maybe he thought something else could happen here. Clem actually just playing 3cc Banshee. This is the most safe and standard opener there is. He's not mixing it up. He's confident, it's like pure confidence. This is what you want to play if you think you can beat your opponent in a strap macro game. You're not really gonna get ahead with this opener ever. You also don't really fall behind. Even if you kill nothing, the Banshees are really good at defending run-bys, at spotting run-bys. They force spores early on, so he showed us Banshee right away. Killed one drone and lost half of its HP for it. And then the Hellions are here for map control. This opener will give you map control and creep spread denial options, as well as pure safety and a good economy, so it's just a good and well-balanced opener. Here he gets one more queen, and I think he gets a cancel on the hatchery. Nothing too significant, although getting a cancel on the hatchery I think is already more than he expected. Cyril went straight to 70 drones, already took this hatch at the same time, so it's not a bad early game by any means, and now Clem also ends up losing a Banshee. So overall, it's 4 drones and a hatch cancel plus a queen for like a Banshee. So I think slightly better for Clem, but nothing to talk too much about yet. This is just very, very standard. So one thing that is really cool that Cyril does is he takes both of these bases right away. On this map, you can, no matter which fourth you take, have some nasty tank positions. So if you take this as your fourth, the tanks can go here, and then the Marines can poke, can go here or here. And if you take this base, the tanks can either go here or here. I think this is a scarier position though. So yeah, Clem here splits up the tanks on the high ground. Either way, it's difficult to engage. And now Cyril goes in here for a link counterattack together with the Banelings. He comes in, he surrounds the Hellions, kills 12 SCVs right away plus all the Hellions, and retreats the moment he sees any Marines here. And he can do this run by because he sacks this base, right? He has an extra base to sack, so he sacks this base, kills 12 SCVs and all of the Hellions. That's well worth it. Now he realizes, okay, there's Marines and tanks over here, so let me send the rest of my Zerglings also across, because what Cyril understands is that if Clem already made 2 tanks and he moved out with them, which he sees, right? He had vision on those 2 tanks, then the only thing that my opponent can have on his side of the map is the Marines, especially now that the Hellions are dead. So a pure big link counterattack should be very good against what Clem can do, and he just sacks his own base. In the meantime, it's a very sound strategic decision, but now the 3rd tank spawns, the rest of the Marines are here, and the counterattack gets thwarted. However, if you kill 16 SCVs at this point in the game, I think if Cyril does this against any other Terran, he's in a fantastic position. Against Clem, however, whenever you do a big counterattack, Clem will punish you on your own side of the map, because in order to do this big counterattack, that means you have less units on your side, which then also makes it so much harder to take efficient engagements on your side of the map. So now Clem takes this spot, which is very difficult as well, after clearing most of the creep over here. And he's gonna take a good fight over here. 13 more SCVs go down, so that's at this point 30 SCV kills overall. In an 8-minute game against a Terran. And Clem still had 50 workers, so he already would be at 80 SCVs right now if nothing happened. And he takes a super good fight here. This is just a very annoying position. He focus fires down all the banelings until the last two. If he clicked those two banelings, Cyril would have been in a very, very, very rough position. But thankfully Clem actually messed up once. He was looking at it, but he misclicked, loses almost all of his marines, which ends up helping Cyril. And you would think that Cyril now is in good position. The Banshee also F2'd into a Spore Crawler and died. So Cyril ends the early game with a fort base alive and with a 18 worker advantage. With his upgrades even, I think he is in an okay position. Here I just want to show how ridiculous Clem is, by the way. He goes in here, right? He fights this, he goes back, and he micros this one marine, which no other Terran player would, because you don't really get a big return for the amount of attention that you put in. Attention is a very important resource in StarCraft, but the thing is that Clem is better than anyone else at looking at multiple screens like very quickly and realizing what's going on that screen. So he can attack while macroing at home and microing at multiple fronts at the same time. Like, this is normal speed now. This is the speed that he's playing at, right? So he makes planetary. He saves that marine. He redrops it. He now hotkeys the army that he has on his side of the map. Makes sure that all of his upgrades are started. He now loads up the marine, drops it somewhere else, stims the marines at the front. Checks how many reinforcements he has. He hears the marines getting attacked on the left side again. Redrops it. Like, this feels completely pointless to anyone else, microing this one marine. If I'm playing in an Archon mode, and I only have this one marine in the medevac to do, I'm still too lazy to do this, because you don't really get a whole lot of return for it. But Clem continuously micros this one marine. Which, honestly, I'm not sure is worth it, but it just goes to show how insanely quick Clem is. That he thinks this is still worth it for him, because it annoys his opponent a little bit, and he can still do everything else just as well at the same time as if he wasn't microing that drop. So here you just focus fires a couple of banelings, click, 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 click. He also retargets. So he goes for a counterattack, and at this point you can't really counterattack him anymore. He has 2 tanks here. He made 4 tanks overall, which means that his Widowmine follow-up was a little bit later. But just with the engagements that he took on the other side of the map, I think now he is already ahead. As Clem is consistently fighting on multiple fronts, which makes it hard to also get creep spread out, right? First he pushed here, which forced back the creep over here, then he pushes here, and you have to also constantly defend. Micro your units, etc. against Clem. Always rotate your units around, try to anticipate where his next move will come from, so you don't have that much time to spread the creep. So this one marine drop, which consistently is annoying, because you need to move the Zerglings to wherever the marine is coming from, also means that it's difficult to spread creep at the same time. So let's take a look at it from Cyril's POV. He now goes for a link counterattack. He realizes, okay, most of my opponent's army is out of position, but Clem is also the best against run-bys. I know you hear casters say you just have to do something on his side of the map, and that is true. You have to do something on his side of the map to make him look somewhere else, but he's just quicker than anyone else. So he's also better at defending the run-bys. The moment he sees the Zerglings come in, he reacts a little bit sooner. He selects the SCVs, clicks over here, instantly without any misclicks. And he actually plays very safe against run-bys most of the time. So here he has 2 tanks in position, so the moment he mineral walks the SCVs, right, he maximizes the amount of mining time. He doesn't move all the way over here like some other Terrans would, while still microing on this side of the map as well. What can you actually do against that? Well, run-bys is not it. At this stage of the game, I think getting up to a higher drone count, trying to establish map control, and just taking good engagements the entire way through is the best thing that you can do, because run-buying on this side at least is impossible, and if you want to bust the planetary, you need at least 30 supply. The moment that Cyril runs across with 30 supply here, he will lose on his side of the map, because Clem is always in your face. So you can't really afford to go for massive run-bys like that. Going for a massive run-by into natural also wouldn't work because of the 2 tanks, right? Plus the reinforcements. So Cyril does what I said, which is just trying to get up some creep spread, surviving attempting to take good engagements. He's down only 2k resource loss. He snipes 3 medevacs here, which is huge, and a bunch of marines, so that's a good trade here for Cyril. And he fights him back. He's only down 10 supply. He's getting up his own hive. That was another good trade for Clem. I think this is about to be a decent trade for Cyril though, because a lot of the Widow Mines have already fired. Oh, another Widow Mine hit. Already 5th base on location. Clem also expands very, very quickly. Also has now 2 sensor towers, which makes run buying even more difficult. Here he clears all of the Widow Mines. I mean, yeah, it's just a lot of back and forth fighting. Now that the lurkers are finally out, it's gonna become harder for Clem to do anything on this side, so he now shifts over, tries to clear some creep. He just plays for map control. Other Terrans, if they play against Cyril, they will try to surprise him. They will try to kill a lot of workers the entire way through. They're gonna suicide army just in order to get rid of parts of his economy, but Clem accepts the macro game. He doesn't try anything wild, he just tries to multitask and play for map control. That's how he plays. Just try to force the Zerg to come off creep to defend his creep, because if you never engage off creep, the Terran army, since it's ranged, it can always shoot down a couple of creep tumors. So if you want to keep some map control and not let yourself get boxed in too hard, you will need to engage off creep every now and again. And Clem already is adding Ghost for the lurkers. Now here there's 4 lurkers. They're holding their own with the Zerglings around. This was a really, really good fight for Cyril. He even gets a couple of parasitic bombs. He catches a lot of ghosts here. He only lost 2 lurkers. So that was a great catch for him. I think this equalized the game. You remember when I showed you the resource loss the last time around? Cyril was down 3k, now he's only down 2.5. So he has traded at the very least evenly throughout the last, I don't know, 6 or so minutes, which is extremely difficult against Clem. But the purely defensive play, where he doesn't try to run by at the same time, has worked out well for him at this point, and now he's trying to go for his burrow and faster play. So he's trying to punish Clem for moving out while getting up big fungals, also trying to take the 2 most exposed bases on this map, the 2 corner bases on Golnora, bottom left and top right at the same time. He's poking, killing some Widow Mines. Let's fast forward a little bit. Tries to run by over here. I think these run bys are almost never worth it. They will kill a couple of SCVs, which is not the most important. Loses a Viper over here, killed some units on the left, but loses his base. So Clem is playing it very, very carefully. And now he finally goes in, because Clem is on the way back. So the moment you have the Terran army running and you realize, okay, there is not that much AoE at the back anymore, there's no tanks, he decides to fully go for it, right? He feels like Clem is slightly overextended, which I tend to agree with, right? That's mostly just Ghost, a couple of Marines, a couple of Medevacs, and there's only a single active Widow Mine. So Cyril sees this and he decides this is the time to go. It's not a bad fight whatsoever, because most of the Terran army is consistently running, right? There is no concave of a Marine Marauder set up here shooting right away. Most of the Terran army is running, so he gets the planetary with the perfect amount of banelings left over. And then disengages. But since there's already a new CC, he just redrops it. And at this point Cyril is not maxed anymore, because he lost the army for the planetary. Still, he didn't even trade that poorly, but he's not maxed anymore. And if you look at the creep spread, he never even got the creep past here because of how active Clem was. He never got the creep towards the center of the map. Now he gets a big fungal, but his army is not big enough anymore. So he loses that fight. Now he gets another massive fungal, good EMPs on the Vipers. Fungals everything twice, but fungals alone never kill bio units. The fungal even get a big damage nerf, so fungal alone doesn't do anything. You need fungals plus banelings to connect, and he didn't have enough banelings left over. At this point he's mineral starved. This is why I said doing these run bys I don't think is good for you. If you run into a base where there is a tank or 2, so your links will die over time. And most of the time it's not only cost inefficient, but also the minerals are very important for Zerg. At this stage of the game you can see he's struggling for minerals at this point. Clem is still expanding. Zerg can't hold either of the corner bases. Nor can he even hold the forward base at this point. And now he's just pretty much dead. He finds a decent engagement with a parasitic bomb, but... yeah, Clem's trading too well at this point. That was another good fight, actually. I'm gonna take a look at that again. A lot of stuff died there for the Terran. But the planetary is gonna be set up. And I think Cyril is dead at this point. Gets another fungal on everything, but GG is called. So... what can Cyril do differently? I think it's just a better early game. You need a super clean early game. Against what Clem is doing, you cannot afford to lose your 4th hatchery, you cannot afford to lose queens. You need that, or the overseers in position. Then if he's playing faster, if he's playing quicker, you need to actively crew spread while everything is going on. I know it's super hard because Clem is consistently attacking on both sides, but wherever his army isn't, which is usually one of like 3 paths. Like if he... there's 3 natural creep paths. It's one of them is over here on this side of the map, and one of them is like this, here, and then one of them is at the bottom. Wherever the army isn't going, you need to constantly spread creep. Otherwise, you will fall apart over time. Creep spread is just so important in this matchup. But yeah, Cyril couldn't go to a 90 drone count right away because Clem was constantly in his face. So if he plays a little bit more cleanly, with a better early game, I think he can get extra drones up, and then everything else could fall into place. Because if he trades the way he did, but he has 10 more workers mining, which is very hard. It's much easier said than done, because you also need to get a 6th place then at some point early on, which I'm not sure how to take either this or this base early against Clem. Then everything else will look a little bit differently. But if you make any mistakes against Clem, he just runs away against Zerg. And this run by, which was, I think, an amazing move, and it should have put him ahead, even in a massively winning position against literally anyone else, ended up backfiring a little bit because of this run by, Clem managed to get into this position, which I don't think cannot let him get there. Like legit, you cannot let him get there. The moment he got there, he traded super well. So I think this run by was sick, but now if he returns with these Zerglings to clean up this army, I think he's in a good spot. The moment Clem sieges forward here, I know he does it almost 1 by 1, but you need to fight right now before those tanks are sieged. You need to be here with the Banelings. Otherwise, it's just too hard. Now, this fight was... I mean, especially with that last 2 Banelings connecting, it doesn't look that terrible, but it was bad engagement. And I think ever since this point, Clem had the army supply advantage. And he just starts running away with it. So if Cyril is super on point and doesn't make any mistakes, like legit no mistakes. The mistakes that he made here were honestly not that big. The biggest mistake is I think that he had his overseer too late. Did he go double Evo? I don't think he did, right? Let's check. I think he went layer first. So I do believe that you just need an overseer in time to hold your 4th base against the first 2 Banshees. The 3cc Cloak, the first 2 Banshees, they don't arrive that early, so it should be very defendable, the 4th base. He did go layer first, but it was kind of late. And it got cancelled once already by the Hellions. So yeah, it's just a slightly cleaner early game, I think would have helped him a ton. And would have allowed him for more units and then better engagements. And it just snowballed so hard against Clem. So let's go into the next one, which was a more late game centric game on post-youth. So Cyril opened 15 hatch. Let's see if Clem blocks the 3rd base. Probably does, right? Yep. He made 2 Zerglings just to get that down, so that's quite nice from Cyril, anticipating that this would not be 2 Rex Reaper. The moment that the SCV comes over, understanding that he will need the 2 Zerglings to get up that 3rd hatchery, he goes 2 gas Roachborn gasless against 3cc 211. This build is just safe against everything, by the way. There is no blind counters to the build orders that Clem is playing. If you play 3cc Banshee or 3cc 211, you will always get into a mid game. There's no all-in. Trust me, I've tried everything. I've watched every game from Bly Wayne against Clem. There's not much that you can do to blind counter that. Even if you know it's coming, which we absolutely do know, trust me. All of the pro Zerg players do know what Clem is going to do. We still cannot blind counter it. It's just a safe and solid opener that you can do every single time. This is the best you can do is try to maximize your drone counts and outgreed it, which is kind of what happened here. Cyril completely skipped speed, then straight up saturated all through mineral lines before making anything, and then he made roaches, right? Which is probably the best that you can hope for. And he goes straight into an infestation pit. He's on top of the Medivacs. Here he loses a bunch of drones to the Hellions, which is annoying. But losing 6 drones that late into the game is not that impactful, if I'm being honest with you. He goes missile first. This also means that Clem needs to play careful with his tank marine force. He can never move out with the tanks, catches a bunch of marines, and this game is probably the best early game that Clem had. He is now up 30 supply. He has a gold base, he has 7 gases saturated, he has a super early hive, he's even in upgrades. I think this is the best start that Cyril had in the entire best of 9 series that they played. So let's see where this one went wrong. Because usually Cyril, even if he doesn't have a start this good, he still beats every Terran there is in the late games because he just keeps trading efficiently. Okay, now uses the first Viper energy for some parasitic bombs. He now needs to lose the roaches somehow, so he just suicides them. I do respect this and goes for a link drop at the same time, right? Clem this game, not like on Golden or Oceanborn, is playing it very passively. He's playing against roaches and against roaches. So the weakness of the roach openers are that your army is not that good when you're maxed out, and you are the one that's supposed to trade away some of your units. It is very good against offensive Terran play, however. So the best thing that you can do as Terran is just be on the map with drops, nothing else, because this build doesn't have anti-air with it. And then just camp into the late game. And your army will always be better in late game than the roach armies. So just going Ghost Siege Tank, it kind of counters everything that you can do from a roach opener. So here comes the quintuple drop, but Clem was in position. At the same time he's trying to attack at the front, but well, Clem is in position, and at this point now Clem is winning. It is Cyril tried to do something, he killed 21 SCVs, that's not nearly enough for the amount of resources that he had lost here. Now he's 5k resources down, and at this point Clem is winning. He's in a good position. But Cyril still wins these games against anyone else. So I tend to look at these games and I'm like, okay, for Cyril this is fine. If I'm in a position like this, I would say the Terran is winning. But for Cyril this... If I watch a Cyril versus Maru game, I'm thinking, okay, Cyril is winning this one. Not the case though against Clem. So how Cyril does this usually, how he plays it normally against Terrans is he tries to take the exposed bases, so he tries to mine this base plus this base, or this place plus this base. Or like these two, and then he's still... right, he mines a little bit of this. It's important that you take a map away, base away from the Terran, so you mine more resources, then you wait for the Terran to expand before you do anything. He usually also goes for Nidus Worms behind his bases, like it would be over here and over here, to retreat on the exposed bases with the drones. And that's what he's doing now, right? He's trying to take the most exposed bases away from the Terran, and he wants to mine from them. He also goes up to 90 drones, which he does quite nicely. And he just threatens. He looks at the Terran army menacingly, and this usually works. Here he gets a Fangen on the Ghost. His Fangens are pretty irrelevant without anything else happening. And now you need to let the Terran do whatever he wants to do. He has this position at the front. The moment the sensor tower comes up, he will see all of the rotations. Attacking in here is very difficult because the bio army is very close by, right? If the bio army is here, you can respond to an attack over here or over here very quickly. So attacking into a 5-base Terran, you can't, I don't think you can do it. You will see most other Zergs suicide at this point, but the moment the one attack goes wrong, I don't think you can kill them anymore. So at that point it really is suicide, and one attack did not go Cyril's way. So I think what he's doing right now, which is what we're used to seeing him play like against all the other Terrans, is the correct call. He could be trying to go for Broodlords as well. I talked with Pick about this. Since the Terran army is mostly tank ghost, Broodlords on paper look good, but where do you actually go with the Broodlords? I think the only position that you can realistically attack would be here. Because the moment that the ghosts fall back behind the planetary for a second, and then they go forward, once the Broodlords shoot anything else, the Broodlords will die. And the Infestors can't zone for them anymore the moment the planetary is close by. And the Broodlord DPS is just not enough. So I think you could go for a Broodlord swap. at this stage and try to attack somewhere else to open up a path, maybe. Like you could go with Broodlords here and then drop at the same time while leaving some units at the top. Maybe. With some Infestors zoning from down here. And then switch out of it again. Like it's like a 10 Broodlord tech swap. Maybe forcing some Thors, some Vikings. And then going back to Hydra, Lingbane, Viper. Which is the composition that actually trades against the ground army. A little bit. And now Clem is just turtling forward and he's already posturing aggressively. He also always repositions the tanks from the back. That seems useless. Here Cyril gets a tank. Couple of SCVs, so that's a good value for the Zerglings. Get some parasitic bombs with instant splits. And instead of trying to take a 6 base right now, Clem is playing to just have the center of the map. He's playing the map control game in a whole different sense from the last game that we took a look at. The one thing that Cyril is going for him is he's mining these exposed bases. He still at some point needs to trade though, because Cyril is turtling forward into his bases, and the moment he arrives over here, you will be forced to take a fight, because if the Terran is on here, your hatcheries and your production will be split up, which is very annoying to deal with. And maybe at this stage Broodlords actually would have been good, because now you could clear all of this. You would probably force an Unsiege and force Clem to go back. It's actually 20 ghosts, so I'm not 100% confident in saying that. But if you micro it perfectly, the Broodlords and Infestors, they could be enough. The way the ranges work out, if the tanks are zoning out the Infestors, I don't think you can go forward with the Broodlords because you're going to get sniped. But if the Terran doesn't play it perfectly and the Zerg does play it perfectly, you can, I think, force an Unsiege and force the Terran to go back there. Clem now takes this base with a orbital, which I think is very smart, considering he can just lift it, let the tank shoot from the high ground. Goes forward and snipes. At this point Cyril is still happy because he's mining this base and this base, so he's always mining a base more than his opponent. And until Clem does something about this, he doesn't need to respond, Cyril. So now that Clem pushes this is just a double drop. If the Terran pushes this in a non-committal way, you want to defend it with your ground army. But if he pushes here with, let's say, half of his army, then there has to be a hole somewhere on the map. Now that I'm looking at it, I can't really tell you where that hole is, because I'm not sure where exactly I would attack. I suppose this is the most exposed base now. If you come here with Blinding Clouds, you would need to have full energy Vipers, 3 of them, to Blinding Cloud the turrets to even get there, and then Blinding Cloud here and here. And it should be fine. But it's not easy, especially because you would need to go all the way around like this and then come from the top, so the Terran sees it as late as possible. Clem also always scans for the army, since he has so many orbitals. He has 10 orbitals at this point, so it's almost infinite scans. And he's pushing forward at the same time. So yeah, now Cyril is in a little bit of trouble. He also decided to go for the Broodlords now, so let's see how the Broodlords work out in the end. There still aren't any Thors, nor are there any Vikings. So on paper the Broodlord is fine, but after all of the Broodlord nerfs, I think the Broodlords just, they don't deal enough damage. The Overseers are getting sniped. He also needs Infestors below the Broodlords. He has one there now, gets sniped by the Cloaked Ghost. Overseer was out of position, the Ultras... This is what I'm talking about. If you don't ever clear this, you can't move around with your army anymore. And very often you will have units spawn from the wrong base, and it's gonna be really rough for you to do anything. He tries to make moves with the Infestors, but there's turrets everywhere. Yeah, I don't know. I think at this point the game is almost unwinnable anymore. This is a good move, going to the top with the Broodlords, gets a fungal on a couple of the ghosts. Now all the Broodlords are dead. If you don't have Infestors ready to fungal right below the Broodlords, they always die. They can't run away from Ghost. And yeah, it's a hard position. He's lost twice the resources. that Clem lost this game, and it's just... it is difficult. At this point, I do think it was over already. You need to hope for mistakes at this point from the Terran, so you can get a big fungal and then you can get an engagement with the ground army, but as long as Clem always has a concave and some of the snipes go through, fungals on ghosts are not that impactful because they, aside from cancelling the snipes, because they have so much HP. And now there's not much that Zerg can do anymore. These trades are just not it. And Clem is feeling it at this point and he's going forward. I think this is overextending and he doesn't need to do this whatsoever. He's now mining half of his side. So Clem should play it a little bit more carefully, but he probably is feeling like, okay, this is really going my way, but the last couple of fights were not very good for him. And now he has all of the Liberators set up. How do you engage this? I have no clue. Zerg tries to do it anyways with some microbial shrouds and dice. Okay, so what could he have done differently? I think this was the one game where he had a good early game, and this on paper is a good Zerg map, right? Why is this a good Zerg map? Well, you can get a gold base, and the map layout is not... It's not supposed to be that good for Terran to camp, but after seeing Clem do it, maybe it's honestly not that bad for Terran. I think to summarize it, Cyril did have a good early game. He tacked up quickly. He then went for the 1-2 punch with the Ultralisk attack. It didn't work out. And from that point on, he was actually losing. And he could have made more moves with Brood Lords. I think is the only way that he can actually force any type of fighting. And slowing down Clem's orbital production, Clem's moves forward. I think Brood Lords at some point as a tech swap and then swapping back afterwards was probably necessary. But the way he played was good enough to beat any other Terran the entire way through. It's just that if you make if you have one bad attack as Zerg against Terran, you don't have the right to kill them anymore. It's just you can't do it anymore. I'm not even sure you can kill Terran to begin with in an even game, even if you play it perfectly on a lot of maps. But the moment this attack goes wrong, the one we're about to see, so the drop over here, the one over here, and then the one over here doesn't get the planter. I think at this point, Zerg is in big trouble. Even though it's 90 workers and you can max out, you have most of the map. And Theron makes a lot of right moves. At this point, it's just really difficult. And I'm not quite sure what he should have done. I do believe there was some space for going for early Broodlords. I do also think on this map in general, you can maybe rush Broodlords out if a Terran plays like this. So like super early Broodlords with some infestors. Try to win a fight that way. But if you're running into a planetary, it's very difficult to do anything with the Broodlords. So I think the Broodlords need to either go here or here. Preferably probably on this side. Just make it, the more difficult you make it for the Terran to figure out how to exactly split his army, the better it is for the Zerg. So going for like a Broodlord swap would have, I think, been the only option. And the moment the Terran gets this part of the map is so difficult because your units can't transfer from one side of the map to the other. The natural rotations that Zerg likes to do is setting his army like this and constantly splitting it in different ways to make it difficult for the Terran to know how to reactively split his units and how to split it up properly, pre-position the tanks, etc. But yeah, I think the moment one fight goes wrong against a Clem that is playing as well as he is playing is super difficult. So I'm not entirely sure how to beat him. I think just more clean play in general, getting better map control, and then from that point on we can try out some different moves. Like the move that Cyril did initially with the Overlords was fine, but then I think when he attacked, he didn't already have the supply back from the roaches that he just lost, so that wasn't perfect. It was just not all perfectly coherent and perfectly executed like the way we're used to seeing it from Cyril. And you cannot afford to make any mistakes against Clem in this matchup whatsoever. It's even just one bad attack and it's gonna be rough. So just even better play. I know it's criticizing on a very high level because Cyril is almost plays so well. I don't think anyone plays perfect, including Clem or Cyril. There's StarCraft is impossible to play perfect, and it's such a difficult game that there's mistakes all the time. But a Clem on this stage, on this day, if he plays the way he's playing, you need to play super clean, you can't make any mistakes, and any bad fight that you're taking, any bad army movement will instantly be punished, and at that point, it's going to be an uphill battle. So maybe if he didn't do this attack, trying to go for earlier Brood Lords, maybe not going for Ultras overall. I know he had success with the Ultra timings against Maru, but they didn't work out here. Could have been better, I don't know. I'm sure we will see in the future though, because these guys will face again, and then on a different day we'll see if it goes differently or if Clem just starts dominating every Zerg. Then we'll have our answer to that. We can also see if Rainer maybe has a word or two about that, because I think Rainer is the quickest Zerg player there is, so maybe he can deal with Clem's speed a little bit better. And if everything else fails, we can just wait for the next map build, because these maps are kind of rough for Zerg. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you like this type of video, make sure to let me know in the comments below, and see you next time.